Ever been stuck dealing with a client who claims to be in charge, but isn't? What if you could spot the real decision maker instantly? And better yet, what if you knew how to handle it without losing time or control? Mind if I share a story with you? You see, we had this client, and I was working with this client. Well, I should say the project team and I was working with this client, and we're thinking this client is, of course, the decision maker as far as coming to the meeting. But let me park here parenthetically, family. This is why it's important to understand the different methodologies or type of approach that you're going to use. Are we going to use approach of predictive meaning waterfall? Are we going to use an approach of agile or incremental or iterative? And so, okay, going back to the story. So anyway, we're dealing with this client. And again, he was saying he was the decision maker. We're running everything by him. And then we go to a executive meeting and I'm looking around the room and, I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm noticing there. I'm like, who's this guy sitting over here? And so we get to talking and presenting everything that we've already assumed that we went over with. This was just for the executives, just to let them know what, where we were at within the project. And the guy that we didn't recognize in the corner, he started saying, hey, well, we were really like this and this was an application. They were like, well, we really love the application to do this and do that and do this. And you could just see the confusion in the team in the room, because we're like, who is this guy? And so, I had my project coordinator, he was taking notes, and I'm taking notes on top of it, because this is how frustrated we were, because we couldn't figure it out. But anyway, long story short, family, what ended up happening is once we got out that meeting, and right away I made a beeline right to the alleged decision maker, and I said, hey, these are a lot of changes that could have been handled before the project. And then on top of that, we're near the end of the year, which that means a lot of our resources, like our developers are going to be really more or less they're going to be pushed to other projects, because the assumption is that we were done for the most part. It was just some cleanup things, and so we probably only needed one compared to 3 or 4 developers. And the decision maker was like, oh, I'm sorry, I should have communicated better, this and blah, blah, blah. But why I'm sharing this story with you, family, is a lot of times as project managers, we will not get this right. I wish I could sit there and say, yeah, you put in all these artifacts but reason why we won't get this right is because we're basing this off of someone telling us that they are the decision maker. So the way that you learn how to get better with this, and I hate to say it, is either listen to this episode or you have to go through it. So I'm hoping that today's episode will allow you to be better prepared, so when you are dealing with a client, that you can take these proper steps to make sure that you got the right person in the room, the right decision maker, to make the decision that is required, so you don't have a lot of different changes. Now, if we're doing leveraging an agile mindset or approach, then we could have nipped this in the bud, but we didn't, which that's a whole nother story. So let's get into the 8-point framework. Point number 1, document all verbal agreements. Verbal agreements can lead to misunderstandings. So documenting them keeps everyone aligned and provides a written record of issues that arise. Family, I always talk about documentation beats what? Documentation always, and I do mean always, beats any type of verbal conversation that we can have, especially verbal agreements, because again, it's no fault to the person that agreed with you, but they may be balancing 3 or 4 or multiple things that they forgot that they agreed to that. So here's my actionable tip. Anytime that you are in a meeting or in a hallway, I don't care, on a call, soon as someone agrees that, yep, that's what we want to do, this is the next step that I would recommend that you do. After that verbal agreement, send a follow-up email summarizing the discussion in bullet points and the action that was agreed upon, and keeping it accessible for the future reference. I would recommend that you put this if you have a SharePoint, OneDrive, ShareFile, whatever cloud, if you don't have a cloud, and I'm not a big fan of this, but save it to your desktop or laptop. But I'm really not a big fan of that, because of the fact is that no one else on the team can access it if you're not available. You never want to be a bottleneck. So hopefully you have some type of cloud enterprise where you can upload that particular agreement there. Point number 2, communicate the importance of a decision maker involvement. A lot of reasons why a lot of frustration and a lot of mistrust happen is because the lack of the expectations that were set and agreed upon. Oh, I like that. The reason why I like that, family, is because when we don't agree upon something verbally, or I should say written, and we may agree upon it verbally, and then you change your mind written, it makes me as a project manager look bad, like, oh, I'm just making this up. This is not really real. So communicate the importance of a decision maker involvement politely, and I use the word politely loosely, explaining the importance of involving real decision makers to reduce project delays. Because when we don't have the right people in the room, just like I shared with my story about, the application we was building, and then the right person gets in the room, now additional delays happen, which affects our costs, which affects our resources, because now our resources may have to work overtime, or we may have to pull them from another project that was also a revenue generating project that may push that project back even further. So it's important, it's imperative, matter of fact, that we ensure that we have the real decision makers in the room. Here's my actionable tips. Explain in the meeting how having the proper decision makers involved speeds up approval and improves alignment with strategic goals. Point number 3, request formal approval for key milestones. Major milestones require a genuine authority. So formal approval at each one of these really does help confirm decisions are endorsed by the right people. Here's my actionable tip, family. At the start of each milestone, ask for a formal sign off from the designated decision maker. Why is this going to help you? Because now if we would have done that originally, again, I had to go through this. So if we would have done that from the beginning, when we walked into that executive meeting, and the gentleman that I was not aware of, that was the actual decision maker, I could have said, hey, because what's going to end up happening is we're going to have to figure out who's going to eat that cost. Is it going to be the client, or is it going to be us? And if it's us, because we want to keep the relationship, how much of that cost are we going to? So there's a lot of revolving questions. So that's why it's important and also to prevent rework. So get a formal sign off from the designated decision maker. So if you do have to go to bat and you have to plead your case, that you have this aligned. Point number 4, present options, not recommendations. Offering multiple options prompts the client to clarify authority. I will say that again. Offering multiple options prompts the client to clarify authority by seeking input from decision makers rather than making unilateral choices. This holds someone accountable. So when you say, here's our options, here's action, I'll just go right into my actionable tip. And when you're in a meeting, mostly a decision type making meeting, present 2 to 3 possible solutions. Let's say no more than 3 possible solutions for each problem. Ask the client to confirm which aligns best with the organization objective. That's going to tell you everything you need to know. When you ask the client to confirm which aligns best with the organization objectives, and I know because I have some intelligent people out in the audience, they're going to be saying, well, what if the person that we assume was the decision maker said, agreed and signed off on everything? What then? Well, this is where we got to go and have that crucial conversation, that difficult conversation. And this is what you're hired for as a project manager. You need to be able to go in there and show receipts, show the documents, so that you can make sure that if this does go bad, which it probably will, that you've done everything possible to set the client up for success as well as the project team. Because if the client sent in someone else to be their decision maker instead of themselves, well, that's a problem we need to address right away. So again, present options, not recommendations. Point number 5, Encourage transparency through the project updates. This is one of the reasons why I love using a framework like Scrum, because it creates or even Kanban or Kanban, depending on where you're from. It really shows transparency. A lot of times when you're leading a waterfall or predictive project, transparency is not as clear, or I should say, is not communicated as often as it should be compared to doing an incremental or iterative type project. So frequent open updates can highlight when decisions are delayed or require higher authority, encouraging the client to involve the right people. Here's my actionable tip. In project updates, list pending decisions and explain their impact, prompting clients to reach out to the real decision makers if necessary. I know it feels like we're playing a game. We are playing a game, family. And if you haven't figured it out by now, this is the game. Because when someone, again, I'll say this over again, when someone who is the actual decision maker sends someone there to be there on their behalf, we need to figure out a way to get to the decision maker, because the person that's there, that's great, but we need decisions that are made. And if this person cannot stand by the decisions and hold themselves accountable, we need the decision maker there. Point number 6: empathize, but set clear, crystal boundaries. Again, empathize, but set clear, crystal boundaries. Empathizing with the client need to feel involved while reinforcing proper authority boundaries, respects their role without compromising the project integrity. Here's my actionable tip. Acknowledge the client's insight, but gently explain that formal approvals from designated authorities ensure project success. Hey, it's just basically saying, family, I need someone to make a real approval, a formal approval, because if we do not receive formal approval, like I talked about earlier, we will have project delays, we will have rework, we will have additional costs, and we will have resources that we will eventually burn out, because we're going to have to pull them and they're going to have to work double time in order to catch up, so this particular software can get out on time. Point number 7: engage in fact finding conversation. This is my secret sauce. You casually just have open-ended conversation about the client's company and its structure, which can reveal the true, or I should say, the real identity of who's really the authority figure without directly challenging them. Here's my actionable tip. During conversations, ask questions like, how does your team generally handle approvals? That question alone will help you gather information about who's really the authority maker, because they may come back and say, well, depending on what the project is, or what the item is, and then you have to dig deeper, because what the whole thing is of asking these fact finding type questions and having this fact finding conversation is really to get to who should we really be talking to. Are you just in our way temporarily to block us from getting to who we need to communicate with? So I say all that to say, asking a question, asking fact finding questions will get you to who's the real approver. Point number 8: proactively schedule check ins with senior management. See, this is one of the things, family, when you are leading a predictive or basically a waterfall project, is normally there's certain check in time windows. And when I say check in, let's say we have 10 milestones, and then we wait until we get to 5 or 7 to have a regular check in. I recommend regular check-ins with executives or upper management to keep the project on their radar, and this will increase the likelihood of engaging actual decision makers. Here's my actionable tip. I would request quarterly. More likely, I would probably do monthly executive review meetings to get feedback and confirm decisions are aligned with the organizational goals. See, family, if we would have done monthly executive review meetings, we probably would have found out earlier that the gentleman that was sitting in there with the executives was actually the decision maker. But we were thinking we had the decision maker, and we were just excited to get ready to show the product and just showing the product to the executives. So I definitely recommend having monthly executive review meetings. And plus, how this protects you, because now you can say, hey, this is the decision. I would even invite the so-called decision maker there. So that way we can say, hey, yeah, this is the decision maker. We've all agreed upon this and that. And the executives can now, they will be able to support you with the actual decision maker in case we need to charge additional money or figure something out to resolve this issue. Here's my bonus. Define project roles clearly. Listen, role clarity minimizes misunderstandings about authority and sets boundary for each individual's involvement in the decision-making process. Here's my actionable tip. Document roles and responsibilities, whether it's that a RACI, a project charter, and also get stakeholder signature for accountability. Here's my 3 transformational remarks, family, and I'll let you be on your way. I appreciate you spending this much time with me. Point number 1, document all verbal agreements. I don't care where this verbal agreement has come from. You need to document it and send. And my actionable tip was to send I believe, a formal email summarizing the discussion points and actions agreed upon, keeping it accessible for future reference. Point number 2, request for formal approval on key milestone. This is the cheat sheet, I say, more or less, of when you have all your milestones in place, I will create a milestone document in which I get formal authority, or I should say formal sign off from the designated decision maker. And what this does, it prevents rework or reversal of decisions. And point number 3, present options, not recommendations. Listen, when you offer the client options, what it does is it minimizes the impact of them. Like when you offer somebody options, you're leading them towards a decision. So basically what I'm saying is present 2 or 3 options, basically, or solutions for each problem, asking the client to confirm which best aligns with the organizational objective. This again will also show you who's really the true decision maker. Well, family, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, listen, that just simply means Ed. I got some big things that are coming next month, so I hope you guys stay tuned. We're going to get to work as usual and make some great things happen. Until next time.